Good afternoon. I talked a little bit about the Darwin and the Darwinian theory of evolution last time, and I wanted to connect it with the genetics that we know. So the genetics mapping was done by Francis Collins, the doctor, and he has very interesting stories about it when he was doing actually it. But we were talking about what is a gene and what is a DNA. So as I mentioned before, there is a cell. The cell has a nucleus. The nucleus has chromosomes. The chromosomes have a DNA. And on the DNA, certain areas are called genes. There are total, literally 3.4 billion genes, of which the protein-producing genes are about 20 to 25,000. When you compare the genes that are in the mice as far as these protein-producing genes are concerned, and the human being or a roundworm or an earthworm, they're all very similar and they're matching. But not only that they are matching, but there are other, what we sometimes use as junk genes. That means there are pieces of genes that we really truly don't know what exactly their function is or was. Or there is something called ancient repetitive element, ARE. When we compare the genetic structure of a mouse to the human beings, we find that these junk genes and AREs are also very similar. That means they are located in the chromosome or the DNA, and they are exactly the same. So now the way in which the cell works is that when there is a need or perceived need or production of certain protein, the DNA, which is double helix or twisted ladder, only the part of that gene where there is only the part of the DNA where that gene exists untwists or becomes straight. It is cut in the middle and top and bottom, and then that is attached or changed to a messenger RNA. The repair occurs automatically of the remaining part, and then this messenger RNA is taken to the factory in the cell, ribosomal factory, where an order is given to make a certain protein. This is a very simple way of explaining a thing. I could say that when you have a gardener or you yourself want to cut the shrubs to a certain level and then shape them, that kind of thing you could compare with this cutting of it. But more than that, I almost feel like you or one of us going to a restaurant. The waiter comes in, takes the order saying you want hamburger or steak, well done, medium done, onions, yes, no, ketchup, blah, everything else. So he takes your order, goes to the kitchen, gives it to the chef, and chef makes the dish according to your order. Similarly, the messenger RNA takes the message of what needs to be done or produced, takes it to the factory, that message is given there, and a factory makes certain protein. I don't want to divulge from it, but the messenger RNA vaccine for the COVID that is done by Pfizer and Moderna are similar. They're injecting messenger RNA to produce a viral protein so that when cell makes a viral protein and body recognizes it as a foreign entity, it produces antibodies. That's how the immunity occurs, and that's how the vaccine works. But so this is the basic way of doing it. What surprises me is that we came from a single cell organism, like maybe an amoeba, and now we have become multicellular, intellectual, thinking, acting, inventing, and trying to ask the origin of this whole thing, human beings. How did that happen? Why did it happen? And again, the Darwinian answer is survival of the fittest. Those who changed to survive in an adverse condition survived. Remaining people died. And survival also depends on procreation. So a particular entity may die, but if it has procreated similar organisms, then they will continue to be there. So just to take an example of amoeba. Amoeba is a single cellular organism. It eats and it becomes bigger. It splits into two. That's the procreation for amoeba. The two amoebae, they eat, they become bigger, become four. Four, they become fatter, they become 8. So essentially the reproduction that occurs at single cellular organisms like amoeba is very simple. Cell eats, gets fat, becomes 2. Cell eats, gets fat, becomes 4. So essentially this is the easiest way of procreation. Now from that, think about the human reproduction. The human reproduction is very complex. The ovum or the egg is released in a woman every so often, usually every 28 days. So there are only 12 times it is released in a year. If you take a mice pregnancy, it's only 21 days. If you take a human pregnancy, it is 280 days. If you take mice, there are multiple mice born at one time of the pregnancy. Human being, usually 1, maybe 2, rarely triplets. So if you really look at it and say that the improvement occurred in procreation because it will help to survive better or not, it certainly doesn't look like that way. Simplest way is to eat, become fat and become 2. Eat, become fat and become 4. Even if you look at the mice, it's a shorter pregnancy, multiple births, much easier way of procreation. In human being, you need to have encounter of ovum or the egg with the sperm 14 days before the next cycle. So that means somebody has to predict as to when is the next cycle going to occur, because ovum is released 14 days after which the menstrual cycle occurs. So if the ovum is released on 14th of a month, the menstrual cycle will occur on 28th of the month. How would you predict that? That means sexual encounter between a male and a female, sperm and an ovum or the egg, must occur 14 days before futuristic menstrual cycle prediction. In addition to that, 2 people, awkward position. In addition to that, only 1 offspring is born most of the time. And if you look at, let's say, horse or a mice, or for that matter, a dog, they are very independent. The puppies or the calves from the cow are very independent within very, very short time. And the human beings, if they are left to their own self, they will never survive. So if, according to the Darwin, the survival of the fittest and a procreation is why the improvement occur, it doesn't look like that when we look at human beings as far as conception, pregnancy, duration, number of offsprings, and of course how fit or how independent they are. Human infants are totally dependent for several years. Contrast to that, calf or the cows or the mice, they are independent very quickly. So how can we think that as a progress in procreation? That is my question. There are genetic mutation occurs. There are some genetic mutation which are spontaneous. So I have 60 more genes or that are different than what my father or mother had. So we really don't know why this mutation occurred. So there is something called spontaneous mutation, that means we don't know. And there is something which is related to environment. So we'll talk about gene mutation, spontaneous and others, and also in somatic cell as well as cancer cells next time. Thank you for watching. Hope you like it and subscribe. Have a nice day.